when I make a phone call with a client, the first thing they'll say is, oh yeah, this property's inherited 60 years ago. They think that that takes away the need to document source of funds. It is not true. It causes other issues. The issue, what I tend to ask the client is, when was the property acquired? How is this person related to you? Do you have the title of the property? Was the land register reflecting passage of title from your great-grandfather to your grandfather to you? And where's the sale deed? And where's the transfer of title, right? It's extremely important to run through the entire process. The government is always going to want to know, even if it's a 100-year-old transaction, how your forefathers or your grandma or your great-grandma acquired that property. It can be just in the form of an affidavit giving a brief background on your family members in India. Secondly, if the inheritance has been passed on for 3 or 4 generations, there's a document called 7A. It's the land ledger in India, which will show the passage of these assets from one person to the other to the other. The third thing we tend to get an RFE on is will. If the property was inherited after the person passed away, you need to produce a will. And if there is no will, your attorney needs to, in advance, let the government know that there was no will in place for this, but my client is a class 1 heir. In India, if you're a class 1 heir, you automatically get the wealth if a person dies intestate, right? Dies without a will. How do you prove that you're a class 1 heir? You need to establish the relationship between yourself and your great-grandfather. And the way to do that is you would then produce your birth certificate. If you're the petitioner produces their birth certificate, which has names of both parents. If it was your father's father, your father then produces his birth certificate to show that he was related to his father. And then that land ledger will have the great-grandfather's name, which then will show that, hey, yes, these guys were related and it passed on. What I want to say in short is you cannot make any statements without producing evidence. Your attorney cannot say, my client inherited this land. Okay, where is the exhibit pertaining to that? All of this must be documented. His grandfather passed away, his father passed away, and then he inherited the land. Well, you need to produce the death certificate. You need to produce the will. If there is no will, you need to provide a letter from the attorney in India saying that this was it was an intestate succession, and here are the Indian laws. Or if there was a will, it's been entered into probate, here are the probate documentation. What I see in gifts and inheritance in the United States and in India is clients will say, well, can my friend give me a gift of $200,000? The government, USCIS or IRS, is not going to believe that your friend is gifting you $200,000. So the rule we follow is take gifts from immediate relatives, blood relatives, which could be your parents, your in-laws, your wife, your siblings. Anything outside of that becomes suspect. So limit that pool of gift to immediate family members. Anything outside of that you want to document as a loan where you're repaying. Again, tax obligations are extremely, extremely important. In India, there's no tax. That being said, you still need to explain that to USCIS. In the US, however, if you're in the US and you're getting all this money from abroad, you need to show that these monies were received as gifts, even though there's no gift tax. And again, the donor on their end needs to disclose to your attorney that there's no tax in India as well. So cross-border tax consequences need to be accounted for. Local tax consequences need to be accounted for. And you need to educate the government whether the asset sold is rural, not rural, whether it's an equity, inherited equity, what taxes you need to pay.